Good afternoon to all of our panelists. The majority of the constituents I represent are renters, so this issue is very personal to me. Millions of people across the country lost their homes after the last financial crisis 10 years ago. But working class communities like mine never recovered. Families got evicted and priced out. In Chicago, this is a racial justice issue. The Logan Square neighborhood alone in my district lost over 10,000 Black families and 20,000 Latino families in the last decade. I can't stand by and let this happen again. And that's why I fought for an eviction moratorium and why I fought for emergency rental assistance. And now I'm fighting to make sure that the program works for neighborhoods like those in my district. The whole point of rental assistance is to keep people in their homes, and it's our job to make sure that that happens. So I want to thank the chair and the ranking member for convening this important hearing. And thanks to all of our witnesses today. But I do want to direct my couple of questions to Ms. Yentl. You talked about the importance of tenant protections in the rental assistance program. I know firsthand how landlords have a lot of different tools to get rid of tenants they don't want. Filing an eviction in court is only one of them. Can you briefly talk about how landlords might get rid of tenants without formally evicting them? And is this common?
Yes, and it's important to recognize too that there are multiple reasons why landlords might refuse to be participating in programs, and we heard that concessions required of them is one. Another reason why we're seeing some landlords not wanting to participate is because they are in hot rental markets, and there's a financial benefit to actually evicting the current tenant, increasing rents, and making more money in the long run. There's also a challenge of landlords who have unlicensed or otherwise illegal units who can't access the emergency rental assistance funds. So we do see during the pandemic and at other times as well, unfortunately, ways that landlords harass or push out tenants. So it's not a formal eviction filing and it's illegal in most places, but they might put a lock on the door and just not let the tenant back in. They might turn off utilities, turn off water, and force that tenant out. Or in less explicit ways, they use harassment to push that tenant out. It's part of the reason why it's so essential that these protections be included if ERA is given directly to landlords um, without any tenant involvement. It's certainly not all landlords who will act this way, but we have to prevent creating perverse incentives for landlords to potentially harass tenants, to push them out, receive the emergency rental assistance without having to agree to any of these other requirements that we're hearing are considered so onerous for landlords.
Well, thank you for that. And I have a follow up question. How can Congress improve the rental assistance program to prevent landlords from unreasonably getting rid of tenants and claiming funds anyway?
Well, again, in most cases, landlords and tenants are applying for assistance together, and the landlord gets paid for the arrears that are owed to them. In those cases, there are ways the programs need to be improved, they need to be simplified, there needs to be self-attestation used, we need to do outreach to get that money out faster. In cases where the committee considers allowing for landlords to receive assistance without involvement of the tenant, there have to be strong protections in place for that tenant to remain stably housed. And so many of those protections are included in the chairwoman's legislation: protections against eviction immediately after receiving the funds, protections against going back and claiming more funds from the tenant in the future. Really important protections to ensure that we're not increasing tenant harassment or housing instability.
Great. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, I yield back.